Hello there, you're listening to the Really Useful Podcast. It's the tech podcast for technophobes. My name is Christian Corley, and joining me this week is Gavin Phillips. Hello, Gavin, how are you doing?
Very well, Christian. How are you, mate?
I would like to say I'm absolutely tip-top, but I had a slightly reduced amount of sleep during the night, which may impact us later in the show. We'll find out. If you hear me slow to respond or snoring, do let me know, or shout or something. Now, if you're listening to this, you've probably listened to other really useful podcasts, and what we tend to do is break down the issues around technology, complications, simplify things. We are the tech podcast for technophobes, as I said in the introduction, which gives us the opportunity to steer away from very kind of boring topics. Now, this is a topic that may once have been considered a quote-unquote boring topic, but the issue with cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin and mining and its impact on not just economies but the world at large, ecologically as well as economically, have become more and more to the forefront in recent months, with increases in value for Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, and reports over the amount of its impact on the atmosphere with carbon emissions at large server farms. But there's also more recently issues surrounding the price of graphics cards, which have been used not for games but for mining. And also, you've probably heard or seen this acronym NFT, Non-fungible tokens. And these are all things that have kind of grown out of the explosion of cryptocurrencies and blockchain over the past few months. And that's really the kind of topic in this week's Really Useful Podcast. And I think we're going to start with NFTs, really, because they're all over the newspapers. John Cleese has drawn an absolutely dreadful doodle of a bridge that he wishes to sell as an NFT for millions, and he's just one. And obviously, John Cleese isn't known as an artist of that type. He's known as a comedy writer and actor and performer. But there are real artists selling real digital goods with NFTs. Gavin Phillips knows a little bit more about this than I do, and when I say little, I mean a lot. So NFT, non-fungible token. It sounds like it's nonsense. What is it? What does fungible mean? Why are we not? Is it fungible or fungible? And why are we saying this weird word?
They're all very, very good questions, Christian. It's best to start at the top as ever. So non-fungible token. So fungible means, well, let's look at it in a different way. A Bitcoin is fungible. You can trade a Bitcoin for any other Bitcoin and it will be the same. The dollar note or the pound note in your pocket is a fungible token. If someone gives you $10 or £10 and you give them a £10 note in exchange, you've exchanged the exact same thing. If you break down that note into coins, a dollar coin, a pound coin, you are still exchanging the exact same thing. You end up with the exact same thing. So currency, regular currency, is what's known as fungible. You can break it down and it remains the same. Non-fungible, as you might be now guessing, means the opposite. You can't break it down. It remains a unique single item at all times. So a non-fungible token, in this case, means a token that relates to a single asset, shall we say, that can never be broken down. So that's why you're seeing this word non-fungible token and this acronym NFT in relation to artworks, bits of music, other sort of creative endeavors. And the creators behind these bits of music and artwork and so on are using NFTs to what's called mint a unique token linking to their artwork, which basically creates an indelible history of ownership for the artwork.
Right. So basically, if you make a copy of it, you can prove that the copy is a copy.
Well, you can make a copy of the artwork itself. And this is where it gets a little bit murky. So, for instance, recently an artwork sold for an NFT sold at the famous auction house Christie's for $69 million. And this is a complete digital artwork. It doesn't exist in the physical sense. It's not like if you bought a Mona Lisa, you could hang it on your wall. It's complete digital file. But it still went for $69 million. The person that bought it doesn't actually own the rights to the NFT, but they own the rights of ownership to it. It does get a little bit murky, and it is where it gets a bit confusing. The other thing with it is that even if you own the NFT and you've paid money for it, it doesn't mean that it is removed from the internet. So a prime example of this is recently Twitter CEO, co-founder Jack Dorsey sold the rights to his first ever tweet on Twitter for, I think it was 2.9 million in the end, $2.9 million to a collector who wanted this piece of, unique internet history. And it is a piece of internet history. It's the first ever tweet on Twitter. But the tweet isn't then removed from Twitter. It still stays there forever. What the person has bought is the right to then sell that digital file of ownership to someone else at a later date. So it's created basically a large market of speculative artwork, which in many ways, for many people, sort of mimics the existing art world.
So, I mean, I'm listening to this, and I know I may have said this before. I know enough about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency to know that I don't know enough about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. So, as a kind of comparative layman on this topic, it sounds like utter nonsense.
I really think from the outside, and to be honest, there's a lot of people who are involved in cryptocurrency and understand it a great deal, who also think that NFTs in this format, I should add, is, well, first of all, it's a market waiting to pop. There's no way that price is like $69 million. And I think Elon Musk's partner, Grimes, who is an artist in her own right, sold a collection of her work for $7 million or what have you. Musk himself is creating a song about NFTs that will be released as an NFT.
Elon Musk is writing a song?
Elon Musk is writing a song about NFTs to release as an NFT. So I'm not sure if he's poking fun at how sort of ludicrous the whole thing is. But it kind of feels that way.
Yeah.
But back to the point at hand, yeah, it does kind of seem ridiculous. NFTs can have some very, really good uses, like tying created assets to a unique token is actually quite good for artists. It does give them much greater ownership over their own work, and they don't have to rely on, say, third-party intermediaries to sell their work. They can sell directly to people that want to buy it. They take much more of the profits that come from their work and what have you. But from the outside, it seems strange in that you could still do this all without the addition of a digital token using existing forms of authenticity.
I like the idea of Elon Musk taking the mickey out of it, and it won't be the first time he's done that, would it? That kind of thing. I mean, I am concerned about the amount of money that's involved in this, given that it does appear to be a kind of a faddish bubble, and there are problems in the world. That level of money in a digital right, in the loosest sense, does seem absolutely insane, doesn't it? The thing is, there's a lot of money floating around for things that make other money, isn't there? There is a speculative issue here, or an issue of speculation, financial speculation, and I think the same is true in some regards with this problem with graphics cards and the price of graphics cards at the moment.
NFTs are minted on the Ethereum blockchain, so that means when someone creates the NFT, a unique token is created that links to the Ethereum blockchain, which once it's on there, it can't be deleted. But like Christian said, there is an issue with graphics card prices at the moment. That stems primarily from the massive increases we've seen in cryptocurrency prices. So today, I think at the time of recording, the Bitcoin price was at something $55,000. Ethereum was at $1,500. And these networks, especially Ethereum, specifically uses graphics cards to keep the network flowing, to process transactions on the network, to ensure the security of the network. And because of that, because of the massively escalating prices, graphics cards are, my gosh, they're so hard to get hold of. If you can get hold of one at the moment for a reasonable price, the likelihood is that it's being resold again within minutes because you could double, triple your money instantly.
Wow.
But it's not just Ethereum that's causing the graphics card shortage. We should add that it's not an exclusive cryptocurrency issue. The foundries, many of which are located in Asia, have all had significant shortages in production, largely in part due to the COVID pandemic that the world is sort of slowly emerging from. But the foundries that make the chips that go in the graphics cards and into the PlayStation 5s, into your Xbox, and it's starting to affect other things as well, self-driving cars and all sorts of different areas of life. But all of these foundries are still struggling to A, cope with existing capacity, and B, to take on more work. And it's not something you can just create a new factory. A new factory takes years to build, to get up to processing speed.
I wonder if as we record this, there's a super tanker run aground in the Suez Canal. I wonder if that's going to impact the price of certain hardware devices over the coming weeks.
I wouldn't want to be the captain that
Oh.
has delayed a massive delivery of hot graphics cards to Europe. I definitely wouldn't want to be that guy.
Absolutely not. Yeah. I mean, it's not just that ship either, is it? It's like everything that's backing up in both directions. It's absolutely insane situation. And I mean, the reality of shipping. I mean, I live by a port, and there are, I don't know how many ships there are that come in every day loaded with containers. Nothing as big as this thing, but they're still huge vessels. And those containers then get lifted by gantry onto the back of wagons and then shipped off around the UK and over to Ireland, to Scotland, to the southwest, Gavin's neck of the woods, to industrial centres and commercial centres around the UK. And, that's just one port in one part of one country. And this super freighter is holding up hundreds of ships going in both directions. It's insane. The impact of that is going to be, I think we're going to notice it anyway.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely right. Something like this, it shows how fragile the transition of goods around the world actually is. If one, admittedly very major artery of transport does get blocked, but the impact will be felt all around the world.
I want to know whose bright idea it was to build a ship that was slightly wider than the Suez Canal, though, because there's probably a similar issue with Panama. I think Panama's two way, isn't it? It's not one way, but the same could happen there. And
yes,
yeah, it's just it's like the Austin Powers movie when he's trying to turn the car around in the corridor.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, it very much is like that. Gosh, it really is. I don't know if it got wedged in the top part of the Suez, it would have been fine because the Egyptian government in the last few years have dredged a second enormous canal alongside it.
Right.
So this bottom part is the only part that now has a single track, and like you said, this ship is, I can't remember, but it's in length, it's taller than the Empire State Building. It's multiple football pitches wide. It's unfathomably big.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. It is. It is. It's amusing in some ways, but then when you understand the implications of it, and the amount of goods they're produced in the East for consumption in Europe and further afield, then then the impact becomes clear. That was always bound to happen. Now, another thing that is coming along at the moment, we've looked at NFTs, and we have also talked about the insane price of graphics cards at the moment. And there was just something else I wanted to ask about that, because it's mostly related to Ethereum, although there are other things that can be mined, and mining is something. If you want to know more about that, we've got links on getting started with mining cryptocurrencies, but it can be very slow. And unless you've got a suitable system, it's unlikely to work too well. Most people who mine, they're not just using one graphics card, are they? They use multiple cards.
No, absolutely. If you want a truly profitable mining operation, you're running multiple cards. Ethereum is still mined using graphics cards, which is we just talked about, which is causing global shortage, or at least in part contributing to it. Whereas Bitcoin uses what are called ASIC miners, which are way more specialized, but use a significantly higher amount of power. The amount of power consumed by all cryptocurrency mining is estimated to be larger than, well, some of the larger countries in the world.
Yeah.
Last time I checked it specifically, Bitcoin was using more than the entire country of Switzerland, perhaps, or the entire country of Peru, which is it's a significant amount. On the global scale, it ranks it at about 1 to 2% of the entire consumption of global power, which is obviously really quite a substantial amount for something that a lot of people don't really see any particular value in. If Bitcoin is a store of value, then people would argue that there are other stores of value. But then as a speculative money-making thing, people want things like Bitcoin to exist because a lot of people are making an awful lot of money on the back of it. So it's going to be hard to tell people to turn off their mining rigs to save power. The other side of it, of course, is that it's not just the power consumption, it's the getting the materials out of the ground to create all the hardware to begin with, and the energy costs that go into that. And then the end of life of the hardware, which, because you run in Bitcoin's case, ASIC miners, 24/7, 365, very high temperatures, running high power consumption, so that's using a lot of energy, and it contributes to the hardware running out and burning out a lot quicker as well. So
what's the lifespan of a card in that case then? How long would you expect one to last?
The graphics cards one is actually quite interesting because after the initial sort of mining boom there was back in 2017, early 2018, a lot of graphics cards flooded onto the market when the Ethereum price finally crashed. And a lot of people at the time, including myself, in fact, said you probably shouldn't buy a graphics card that's been used to mine Ethereum because it's been run, at super high rate 24/7. More recently, there's been a few studies showing that although it's not fantastic to run a graphics card, at super high rates for a prolonged amount of time, it's actually better in some ways than forcing it up to a high temperature and cooling it down again, so cycling it repeatedly. So although it does put it under a high level of stress, it's a consistent level of stress that the graphics card is actually designed to cope with. So it is inevitably going to create a lot of waste. There's no way it can't, because there's a lot of failure going on with these graphics cards anyway.
Sure.
But it may not be as bad as previously thought. I'd also add that although Ethereum uses a lot of graphics card processing power to keep the network going. The network has long talked about switching to what's called Ethereum 2.0, which is going to be like the next evolution of the Ethereum blockchain. And with that, it will move to a different form of network called proof of stake, a proof of stake algorithm. So instead of having to mine everything very, very, very intensively, the mining will drop back gradually, and will eventually start using less power. But this upgrade has been in talks for, well, at least 18 months to 24 months. So people keep saying it's just around the corner, it's just around the corner, but it really is apparently just around the next corner.
Okay. There was one thing I wanted to mention about that, and in my attempts to understand more about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin in particular, I've been following people on Twitter. One of them is Max Kaiser, and there's another guy called Marty Bent or something. And I think that's the name. Either way, regardless, they've provided links to alternative arguments in terms of the economic impact, the ecological impact of cryptocurrency, suggesting instead that businesses that would normally be physically mining are instead, or as well as Bitcoin mining, I suppose, are instead buying cryptocurrencies, and thereby they're reducing their own involvement, and maybe down the line that pipeline isn't getting built because the business is investing in cryptocurrency. Do you think is that a fair argument, do you think?
It's an interesting way of looking at it, isn't it? So if they're buying it, they're not contributing to it, it means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're making investments in this new market, rather than actually engaging in industrial activity.
Yeah, I guess it comes back to, so recently Elon Musk bought, I think, $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin for Tesla and put it on Tesla's books. Or was it $750 million, and it immediately ramped up to 1.5 billion or whatever, and it was considered genius. But because of that, a lot of people took into question his environmental credentials, because they're saying, how can you sanction something like the purchase of such a phenomenal amount of Bitcoin because of how it is obtained? But I think that very much ties back into what you were saying there, doesn't it? The Bitcoin that he bought was already in existence. So is it still an environmental issue after the fact? Because of the way the network is maintained, mining is always going to happen, and it will continue to happen even after all 21 million Bitcoins are mined. That's just how the Bitcoin network is validated. So there's always going to be some element of power required to keep the network going. But once all those coins are mined, the idea is that the amount of power required to keep the network going should then decrease. Although that's not going to happen for, can't remember how many years, but it's quite a while, because the way that the network is programmed, every now and then the amount of Bitcoins you receive for mining slowly drops off, what's called a halving event. So it prolongs the amount of time that new Bitcoins are minted for. So yeah, it is a really interesting one, because there's quite a lot of other big businesses now who are making investments in cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
And many that, like you alluded to, that would claim to be, or at least have, a focus on promoting a better ecology for the world.
There's another take on this as well, in that, as we've seen, China is one of them. Governments issuing cryptocurrencies, they are then, take the UK with the Paris Agreement and commitment to reducing carbon outputs. There's no way the UK could start its own cryptocurrency unless it was a backed cryptocurrency by another cryptocurrency, because it would ramp up I mean, it would absolutely break their commitment, wouldn't it?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. In terms of mining and what have you, the big thing is for, like I was saying with the Ethereum 2.0, using this a different type of system network consensus algorithm called proof of stake, which doesn't require nearly as much mining at all. So it works more on how much of the cryptocurrency is in existing wallets, and people use the amount of crypto within the wallets they stake the cryptocurrency, and the amount of crypto on the network is used to find consensus amongst the transactions that are going forward. But I think that may be delving into it a bit too far, and perhaps something for another podcast. But proof of stake algorithms should, by and large, reduce the amount of mining required, and thus reduce the environmental impact of cryptocurrencies on the whole.
It is a topic that sits between the kind of the old world and the world that we appear to be moving into. So I dare say that we will probably talk about cryptocurrency in some form again in the future. But I think now is the time to wrap up this week's really useful podcast, in which we've hopefully learned, I certainly have, exactly what a non-fungible token is, NFT, and why it's important and why people are spending so much money on them. Although, then again, as a Yorkshireman, I never understand why people spend so much money on anything. We've also looked at why there's a shortage of graphics cards, and while it's not entirely due to crypto, a lot of it is. And as you've just heard, Gavin and I have kind of looked at some of the ecological arguments against and in favour of at least mitigating cryptocurrency mining. Gavin, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think that there is a place in the world for things like non-fungible tokens, but as we sort of said at the start of the show, in its current guise, and with people piling in to try and make a quick buck, it's sort of it's untenable at the moment. It's a bubble waiting to pop, and it will pop. These things always do. I remember back in 2017 when people thought Bitcoin was just going to go up and up and up and up, and then it dropped 90% of its value. Mm-hmm. So in that, NFTs are an interesting proposition, but currently they are very, very speculative, and I'm not entirely sure in their current guise this isn't for me how they will continue. We will see an evolution of non-fungible tokens into, what they will eventually become, similar to how Bitcoin started it all, and then you had Ethereum, and now there are many other different types of cryptocurrencies being used in different capacities. So I think that's how it will go.
Okay, that's a useful ending to our discussion. We'll be back for another really useful podcast next time. Until then, from Gavin Phillips and myself, Christian Corley, it's goodbye.
Cheerio.